Mute button go. Okay. Well, thanks for having us here. Happy to join everybody today. I'm Tyson Racer. I'm the Fisheries and Food Systems Program Manager with Ecotrust. And with me here today is Maya Hardy. She's our Egg of the Middle Program Manager. Today we're going to chat with everybody a little about some of our programming with Ecotrust, tell you a little bit about who Ecotrust is, and talk with you about some of our efforts in rebuilding our regional food system and helping people kind of get re-engaged with the food system and think about and support them in scaling up operations to get into what we call the egg of the middle. So we look forward to sharing with you kind of what we're doing as we think about and engage with different projects to rebuild regional food systems. So Maya, I'm gonna go ahead and let you kick it off here for everybody.
Yeah, you can just go to the next slide.
Awesome. So for those of you that might not be familiar with Ecotrust, we are a regional organization that works across natural resource sectors. So we work in forestry, in fisheries, in food and agriculture. And you can see on the slide a map of our region. So we work in the Pacific Northwest, including Alaska, Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. And all of the work that we do is really at the intersection of climate change mitigation and adaptation and building racial and social equity. You can go to the next slide. So I thought I would share this slide as an illustration of how Ecotrust work is evolving and to give you a sense of our core strategies and some of the long-term outcomes that we're working towards. And I'm not going to walk through the entire slide here, but you can see on the left, our core strategies are restoring lands and waters, economic development, and capacity building. And on the right, there are some examples of how this manifests and through the outcomes that we seek to achieve in our work. And in our food systems work in particular, I think the core outcomes that really resonate are around power shifting, increasing triple bottom line businesses, more equitable distribution of resources to address climate change. And we'll walk through some examples of the work that we do in the food systems, but I think this is just kind of a really important slide to give you context in terms of really the work that we hope to do and the outcomes that we hope to achieve in our region. Okay, so Tyson, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Yeah, so Ecotrust works in a variety of ways. Both Maya and I are engaged in the Ecotrust Food and Farms and Fisheries program. A lot of us are engaged in different ways and different facets within the fisheries, food, farms kind of landscape. The region we're serving again is from Northern California, up to Oregon, Washington, and all the way up into Alaska. Some of the projects that we're engaged with that's kind of rebuilding this regional food system kind of starts with some of our longest lasting, oldest programming that we've done. Ecotrust has long recognized that our farm to institution work is incredibly important. We've engaged in farm to school programming for many years, engaged in different policy activities to leverage funding to support our schools and supporting our local farmers and getting their products into schools, ensuring that our kids and our eaters in those institutions have better access to high quality regionally grown products. We work with them in multiple different ways. We have two programs, one called the CureWorks Northwest, which is working with Healthcare Without Harm in the Oregon Department of Agriculture, to work with local hospitals in the Portland metropolitan region and school districts throughout the Portland metropolitan region to work together to find ways to source more local, healthy regional food, as well as come up with new value-added products that are healthy and that are also something that's going to be desired by those that are in those different locations. Both hospitals and schools have different regulations. If anybody out there is engaged in this work, you know that price points can be a really big issue, especially in schools. in a good time with grant funding, schools might be able to pay up to $2.50 for one school meal. A lot of schools only have $1.25 to pay for schools. So it's a big challenge and something that we continue to work on and we find incredibly important, and continue to find solutions for, as well as continue to try and push up against those challenges that we continue to see there. Another interesting aspect of Ecotrust and how we engage in the food system is Ecotrust is a nonprofit organization, but we also act as a for-profit. We have a for-profit arm to Ecotrust. It's called what we call Ecotrust Investments. Through our Ecotrust Investments for-profit side of what we do, there's a number of ways that our for-profit work shows up. One of them was through some of our previous research engagements with farmers, fishers, other food producers from around Oregon and Washington region, was realizing that as folks were looking to get their products to local markets, Portland is a desirable area to get those products to. That's our largest city here in Oregon. And what our producers were running into was issues with distribution, that last mile. How does product get into Portland? And how do they actively move that product once it's in Portland to different locations, to their customers throughout the region? A lot of our farmers, ranchers, fishers were running product into Portland, didn't have a place to store it. They're running into Portland, literally dropping all their products and then going all the way back to the farm. And they were repeating that process time and time again. So we created what we call the Red on Salmon Street, which is a centralized food hub. It's on the central east side of Portland. It's about a 20,000 square foot building. It holds 5 main tenants. One of those tenants is a food incubator kitchen that houses at least 25 different startup value-added producer businesses that are everything from cakes to pies to different lollipops. They have a whole bunch of different things that they're creating in that space. One of our other tenants is food distribution slash local producer. They work with different ranches across the area, but Carmen Ranch. They just utilize the new space to scale up their operations within the Red, have a better reach into local markets, working with multiple ranches across the Pacific Northwest. And kind of what we're looking at here, we have 2 other tenants, but to keep moving, what we're looking at here is kind of the Red, and the Red has one main function that's put behind it. And it's about 15,000 square feet of the 20,000 square foot building. And that's our warehouse and distribution services, which is all managed and run by a company called Beeline. Beeline does the in-house logistics for storing the food. They have a refrigerator space as well as a large freezer space for people to store their products for whatever they might be bringing in. They also provide distribution services by these trikes that you see here. These trikes are electronic. They run at least 20 different routes twice a day, 7 days a week, distributing to local restaurants, retailers, you name it. These guys will take products there. The advantage of these trikes is there's no carbon emissions. And 2, these trikes are delivering just the amount of product that needs to be delivered without using like a semi truck to having to stop in the street, block traffic, and then get the product in. These trikes are mobile. They can get out of the way. They can allow traffic to flow and get the products where they need to go. Beeline has flexible services as well, where they can work with each producer and their needs to help them figure out what kind of packaging and what they can do to better support our producers across the region. Another program that we're looking at and we've been working on for the past couple of years here within the Pacific Northwest is what we call the Green Workforce Academy. The Green Workforce Academy is done in collaboration with the Blueprint Foundation, the Native American Youth and Family Center, Self Enhancement Inc., and Wisdom of the Elders. It's for Black and Indigenous youth in the Portland metropolitan area. It's a culturally specific curriculum that is built into this program, and it's there to support folks in preparing for green jobs. The food part of the program kind of gets into when we're doing this programming, each session of the students that come into this programming, they are all 18 years or older. They have to be graduates of high school. And each curriculum that happens twice a year. Each curriculum session is 1 month long. They take them through a variety of things like forestry, urban forestry, But some of the food system stuff that they get into here as well is visiting farms and ranches and learning about how different folks, how communities of color are actually doing this farming and ranching, developing kind of their skill set, their baseline skill sets, their baseline knowledge for how these things are done, and developing these youth interests in different areas such as farming. This year, we also included a chef that's native Colombian who moved to the Portland metropolitan region a number of years ago, Chef Andre Uraib. And this was the first year that we actually had the students engaging with Chef Andre, who has an incredible message of just hope and perseverance, as well as he's just an all-around community local champion. So from my understanding, the program went really well, and he taught with them kind of what's going on the backside, how he thinks and how he's worked in his experience to procure local products, regional products, what he does with his food, and how he uses that as a healing source to the eaters that are around him. And one last thing that I would like to mention for my portion here is some of our work that's being done with this community forest partnership. Some of you that may have been a previous session, you heard about the community of Cake and what's happening there. And Ecotrust is also engaged in the community of Cake through the Southeast Sustainable Partnership. You can see here within this photo, on the very left photo, on the very left-hand side, that's Mayaka Nix. She's our wonderful Ecotrust staffer, started off as an intern and has kept working there. She's the coordinator for the Community Forest Partnership. The major partners in the partnership are Alaska, Cake Tribal Corporation, the Organized Village of Cake, and the U.S. Forest Service. What this project is about is it's a 5-year project to build community capacity for natural resource management and cross-organizational collaboration. The program is to conduct a landscape scale watershed restoration project currently. The partnership in all seeks to enhance traditional and subsistence food security, diversify local economy, develop a natural resource workforce, and invest in the tribal sovereignty in the community of Cake. This isn't just a science-based landscape watershed restoration project, but it's hugely important because it employs new community-based partnership approach to land management, bring power back to the community. The program itself is currently employing 2 to 5, depending on each year how it goes, 2 to 5 local young adults, and is helping to build their capacity and skill sets while getting paid to do this work within the community. The goal for the project overall is to improve productivity of the local watersheds versus subsistence and commercial economic development, which of course plays a major role in the food system. Hi.
Thanks. Yeah, so Ecotrust has a team that we call our knowledge systems team that does mapping and modeling. And right now we are working on a project to model the potential for Oregon's farmland to store carbon. And really sort of this tagline is agriculture as a climate solution. And you can see this is a map of Oregon and the soil organic matter that is currently existing in Oregon's farmland. And our team at Ecotrust is using a modeling framework called COMET that is looking at the potential for this farmland to increase carbon by switching from conventional farming practices to regenerative or sustainable farming practices. And so this work is largely going to inform policy, but certainly has relevance for folks that are working in Oregon, that work with producers on transitioning production from a more conventional farming system to a sustainable or regenerative system. We expect that the work will finish up here probably in January or February of 2021. And it's just another kind of example of Ecotrust and some of our knowledge systems team using GIS and using modeling as a way to understand agriculture as a climate solution. Next slide. Ecotrust has also been building out our programs that support Black, Indigenous, and people of color producers in Oregon and Washington. You can see here in the photo, this was taken from a conference that's called the Back to the Root conference that happened in Oregon at the Red, actually, the building that Tyson was just showing us in the slide. And this happened back in 2019. And
this conference is specifically for BIPOC folks from the region. I think there were folks from Washington, Oregon, and California that gathered to learn, to share resources. They had culturally relevant trainers and speakers. And this is work that we are continuing and we're building off of. And in 2021, we're going to be launching a Food Systems Leadership Fellowship that is specifically for BIPOC folks in Oregon. Yeah, next slide. And that brings us to our main topic for today, which is our Ag of the Middle Accelerator program. You can go to the next slide, Tyson. So Tyson was mentioning some research that we did that helped inform the infrastructure, the RED that we built out. And similarly, the Ag of the Middle Accelerator was developed out of some research that Ecotrust did on the gaps that exist in the support for small farmers in growing and scaling their businesses, specifically to reach larger markets like institutions. Ecotrust has been doing farm to institution work for a long time. And I think there was a sort of a desire to start working with producers to support them in maintaining viability of their businesses as they grow to reach these institutions. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time walking through what's on the graph, but for the purposes of our conversation, Ecotrust defines Ag of the Middle producers as folks that have outgrown farmers markets, but aren't, they're too small and really not interested in selling to commodity markets. And so making this leap from a small farm to a mid-sized farm takes, a level of business sophistication and investment in staff, in infrastructure, in marketing, in supply chain support. And what we realized was that there really wasn't any program that was geared towards supporting producers and kind of making this leap. And so we developed our Ag of the Middle Accelerator program to really kind of support folks in decision-making around growth and supply chain and ensuring viability as they grow. Next slide. So the Accelerator program is a 2-year program for farmers, ranchers, and fishermen in Oregon, Washington, Northern California, and Alaska. Each year, we welcome a new cohort of producers, typically around 15 to 20 businesses that we welcome every year. We're actually just getting ready to launch our next cohort here December. We just finalized our application process in our cohort. And really, it's designed as a business development program to support folks in maintaining viability of their businesses. Next slide. So again, it's a 2-year program, and we really try and center on foundational concepts that give producers the skills, the knowledge, the language, and the connections to grow. So we work with qualified business trainers and consultants that run programming and provide technical assistance that is a little bit more advanced and that is very specific to farming and fisheries. And then we also connect them with buyers through some of our farm to institution work. We connect them with CPAs, with lawyers, with lenders that really, I think, are critical aspects to sort of this business sophistication piece. I think a lot of small farmers they wear so many hats, and as they grow, there's kind of this moment of reckoning, like, what can I kind of farm out and what can I do in my business, and what makes the most sense for me to hold versus, getting professional help with. And I think we find that a lot of folks, when they come into our program, they've been working with service providers that are not experts in their industry, and sometimes to their detriment, that there's a lot of tax code that is specific to farming that some CPAs just don't know if they're not an expert in that area. So we actually have spent quite a bit of time on seeking out service providers that have a specific specialty in farming and fishing to provide support to our producers. And really, I think what we've heard more than anything is that our producers are really excited to connect with each other and actually learn really, really well from being in a cohort of producers that are in a similar place in their business journey. And so we provide a lot of opportunities for connection and sort of peer-to-peer support. Next slide. So this is a really text-heavy slide, but this is a little bit more detail about how the program is structured and gives you kind of a great overview. The first year of the program, we really focus on curriculum that's, I think, basic foundational knowledge that the farmers and fishermen really need to know to be effective in making decisions about growing their business. So we have classes on tax, on business structure, on accessing financing, and knowing how to distinguish what types of credit you might need in your business. We do an intro to marketing and sales. And in 2020, due to COVID, this is all going to be happening virtually, but under normal circumstances, quote unquote normal, we would have 2 in-person convenings where producers come together to get trained. We bring the consultants and the producers for usually a 2 or 3 day training. And in between those 2 in-person convenings, we would do webinars. We also are huge fans of the USDA Value-Added Producer Grant and support folks in applying for the USDA Value-Added Producer Grant as a part of our program. Our program is funded through the USDA, and we have great relationships with our USDA folks. So many of our participants actually do apply, and many of them get their Value-Added Producer Grants to execute some of their goals around marketing in particular. And then we support them in value chain coordination through the RED, through Beeline, the distributor that we were sharing about earlier. And then as their first year wraps up, we go through a goal setting process with them to really kind of help queue up the second year of the program. And what the second year looks like is really one-on-one support. What we've found is that at a certain point, businesses really need tailored technical assistance, and that group style learning isn't necessarily as effective anymore. And so we found through a lot of lessons learned that pairing folks with consultants is really the most effective. So we have a group of folks that have experience with food and fishing and are sort of really specifically qualified in this industry to advise them. So they have one-on-one meetings with consultants through the winter. I guess I should say the program runs from December through March, because that's typically when farmers and fishermen are not as busy. So we really try and tailor the program to the lifestyle of our producers. So folks in second year have one-on-one meetings every month with their consultants and support with the goal execution. And again, this is happening virtually due to COVID, but yeah, I think that provides a pretty decent overview. Tyson, I don't know if there's anything you want to add here before you go to your next slide.
Yeah, I would just add that, for us in scaling up into the middle, a large portion of why this is important to us is realize there's a lot of resources on the ground or at least a fair amount of resources on the ground for beginning farmers and ranchers and incubator programs. But as folks scale up and they start to run into these barriers about thinking about those next steps, there's just not much that we saw in the landscape that was supporting those folks to get to that next place and help them walk through their thoughts and the opportunities and the barriers and challenges, help them organize that. And that's why we brought this program into the fold. And as a part of that, what we also found valuable is a lot of these producers that are coming up from the bottom. They have community-based values, community-driven values. They have environmental values for how they catch their fish or for how they work their farms. They're kind of what we call those values-based producers. And the theory of our change here is that as we scale up these values-based producers, they're bringing those values with them as they go up the chain, and they're allowing more access to not only their values and connecting them with the consumers, but just also with their holistic foods that they're growing. Some questions that we've always had to ask ourselves, and we've really started to drill into over the past couple of years, But we keep thinking about how this program needs to change and what we can do better at. And a few of these questions that came up is just like, we don't have much time. We're fighting climate change, which requires a landscape scale conversation, which requires thinking through regenerative practices like no-till practices. And Maya's really the pro there of knowing what more of these kind of regenerative practices are on the farm. I'm the fisheries guy again. But thinking through those and how do we scale that type of agriculture, because that's going to be needed as we continue to move forward into the future and think about how climate is changing. And how farming and ranching can play into that. And then also given, given racist land and labor issues that are prevalent in the food system and have been a historical part of our food system, how can we serve producers of color and integrate food justice into our programming more effectively? And then also thinking through how do we invest and build local collectively owned infrastructure to support the food movement into larger markets. The red's a part of an answer to that in Portland. But as you all know, as they're part of food systems, that infrastructure is so important across the entire food system, especially when you're looking to kind of build this decentralized system and building power for communities, a continual challenge. And a few ways that we're looking at adapting our program or are adapting our program to meet some of those needs is we're specifically prioritizing regenerative sustainable farms through our application process. When we build businesses, when we go through this process, want to make sure that these businesses are better equipped to move forward and support those businesses that are implementing those practices. We're also leveraging trust in our networks and building out anti-racism learning groups. We just started it a couple months ago. It's a new adaptation into our program, but bringing in our program people to talk about anti-racism, what that looks like and how that shows up in their communities, with their farm, and in our network of this egg of the middle producers that we're collaborating with. And then also working in local communities with egg of the middle producers. There's a couple examples out there right now on the north coast of Oregon and a few other places where we're collaborating to develop food hub infrastructure along with our egg of the middle producers who we connected to through this program and are now launching out into other projects with them to support them in their communities. And here's just a little slide that kind of shows you where all our different producers are in the region. Everybody up in Alaska are fishers, of course. We'll bring in about 7 more fishing businesses from Alaska this year, which would be really incredible. And a couple examples of our producers here is Drifters Fish. They're up out of Cordova. They're getting into some value-added products, which are really interesting, such as tinned squid. And then Alluvial Farms. And Alluvial Farms is implementing some regenerative practices, and they have a wonderful pig farm up in Washington State. Thank you so much for everybody here today and listening to us. I know we didn't have time to get into Q&A, but if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email. I think there's some connections that happen within the platform we're all using for this event. So thank you all so much, and look forward to catching you in some of the other rooms throughout this wonderful event that everybody's a part of today.
Thanks, Tyson and Maya. Wonderful content. And yes, if anyone wants to, we're at the end of the half-hour session, and so if anyone wants to reach out to Ecotrust, you can message them through the Whova app, or Tyson, let's chat and email out right now to everyone, just in case.
Okay. There we go. Yep, and there's my email that I put up there for you all. Oh, sorry, I did that one privately. Let me get that to everyone. Here we go.
There you go. Awesome. Great, and honestly, I'm waiting for my other speaker to show up, so if we want to take 1 or 2 questions, that's okay too.
Yeah, happy to take any questions for how much overtime we might have. Yes, I see a question in the chat from Sunny Rice asking if we do farmers, ranchers, and fishers at the same time or in separate groups. Usually we do them all at the same time, and our network has gotten great benefits out of it. They love learning from each other, love learning about the other aspects of the food system, and that networking component across the food system has been huge. People have really liked it, and we weren't sure when we started and it's been so advantageous. At times we have to create different tools. Sometimes we do have to create separate conversations for particular content, but I would say 90%, 95% of the time, all the trainings are happening together with the farmers, the ranchers, and the fishers, all in the same room.
Great. Well, thanks to you both for showing up, and people know how to get a hold of you. Oh, Kyla says, have you had any interest from any farmers in Alaska?
We have yet to get a farmer from Alaska, and I challenge you, Kayla, or someone you might know, to send an application into us or connect with us. It'd be great to see a farmer from Alaska apply to the program.
Yeah, Kyla, get out there. Awesome.
Right.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to move on to our next presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Take care. Okay, this next presentation is Alaska Tilth, Feeding Our Families, Funding Our Farmers. And I'm actually going to moderate and present at the same time. So hang tight while I pull up my slides. And I see all my co-presenters are here, which is awesome. All right. Paused. Okay. Set the timer. I have 3 other co-presenters today. I see Ben. I see Adair. I just saw Adair. I see Megan. There you are.
Hi.
All right. Gang's all here. Let's do this. Can everyone see my screen? Ben says 2 thumbs up. Thanks, Ben.
Yes.
Okay, great. Here we go. So welcome to this session on Tilth, Alaska Tilth, funding our farmers and feeding our families. My name is Rachel Miller, and I'm moderating this room today, but the hat I'm wearing for the next 30 minutes is as the Kellogg campus manager for Alaska Pacific University's Kellogg campus, which is an 800-acre farm in Palmer. We're presenting on Tilth, and this is not solely APU's project. This is a project that is a big lift by many organizations in the Mat-Su Valley. So without further ado, we'll get going. Oh no. There we go. So what is Tilth? Tilth is, in essence, about soil quality, and as you see the definition here from Merriam-Webster, about cultivated land. Ben is our farming expert on the panel. Ben, do you have anything to add about the definition of tilth itself?
Yeah, I think the origination of tilth and its name for this project that we're going to talk about today has to do with cultivation between communities and organizations within those communities to meet needs through growing food, but also through connecting that food and generating growth through farmers and also other organizations helping meet food security needs.
Right. And so looking at the basic definition of tilth, it's about soil quality, right? And we can't do any work in food without actual good, healthy soil, which means we need a good, healthy foundation for the programs that we grow in communities. So here's our teaser. This is what Tilth 2020 did. We provided over 10,000 children meals and injected about $50,000 into the Mat-Su agricultural economy. Tilth has looked different every single year it's run. Adair Harmon is our Tilth expert here today. She's been working with the Alaska Tilth program longer than anyone. So she'll have some insights on how it's evolved a little bit later in the presentation. But I want to make sure that we acknowledge there are other Tilth programs that are happening in the United States and around the world. There's the Tilth Alliance, there's Oregon Tilth. If you Google Tilth agricultural programs, Most of them have very common tenets about farmer training and community well-being through agriculture. So I don't want to falsely give the impression that we are affiliated with those programs. Alaska Tilth has been separate from those. Though if they reached out and said they wanted to partner, I think we'd love that conversation. So this is Alaska Tilth. It gathers a community of organizational collaborators to serve the most food insecure members of the community and develop regional food system resilience. Here's how it works. If you don't know what we're talking about yet, this is exactly how it works. So we have a network of farmers in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, the Mat-Su Valley. We have a network of Tilth farmers. Those farmers grow produce and they sell it at market rate. Megan is our Tilth coordinator. Hi, Megan. You're on camera now. Megan collects that produce from the farmers that Tilth purchases, and she then takes it to the UAF, or the Matanuska Experiment Farm and Cooperative Extension Center, where they have a fantastic cold storage facility, and more importantly, they have a human whose name is Adair from Cooperative Extension Services, who takes that produce, does cooking education classes, and then distributes it or facilitates pickup for hunger organizations in need in the Mat-Su Valley. And again, you're seeing a lot of different organizational partnerships. We have APU, Alaska Pacific University, we have Spring Creek Farm, which is a project at APU, Cooperative Extension Services, we have the Matanuska Experiment Farm, and then all of the hunger organizations that we work with. So it goes to our cold storage, distribution, and education point, and it is then delivered or picked up from our cold storage, and we get it to healthy, well-fed kids in the Mat-Su Valley. That's what our produce ends up going into. This is a pretty simplified model of how Tilth works, but in essence, food comes from farmers through our chain, and it gets into hungry bellies who need access to good to produce. And this is our team. Again, this has looked so different every year. Tilth would not happen without these people. And Tilth also this year would not have looked the way it did without a very generous $50,000 CPR grant from the Mat-Su Health Foundation. This grant was a game changer for us. It allowed us to expand our pilot to purchase vegetables at market rate from farmers who maybe were not able to go to market this year because of COVID. Maybe they were at risk. Maybe they didn't want to be at risk. And it also allowed us to hire Megan, our new Tilth coordinator. This is it's a grant, and so it's time bound. This is not long-term sustained infrastructure, what we would call hard money. And so we are, at the end of the presentation, you'll see kind of what we're thinking about for in the future. But wanted to just take a second to recognize that the Mat-Su Health Foundation has heavily invested in the Tilth program, and it really changed a lot of things for us this year. So we are very grateful to them. And with that, I will turn it over to Ben to tell us about the Tilth farmer producer perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So as Rachel said, I'm the farm manager at APU Spring Creek Farm, which is a nonprofit farm on the Kellogg campus in Palmer of APU. And we grow vegetables on about 3 acres. And in terms of mission, along with being a production farm, we have programs in research, education, and community. And Tilth kind of falls into the community category of our mission here. But you know, as a nonprofit, we also rely on our production, the actual sale of the food that we have here on the farm, to kind of support our own farm. So today I'm going to put on just that hat basically to try to represent other farmers who were in our position too of coming into a season, especially this year, and trying to sell our produce. And at the beginning of the season, not being 100% sure where we were going to sell our produce since we were entering such a time of uncertainty. So Rachel, I think you can hit the next slide. Great. So as a production farm, we sell at a variety of venues. We sell vegetables through our CSA program. We sell vegetables through farmers markets, and we also sell vegetables wholesale. we were pretty sure that we could keep selling vegetables through our CSA this year. And our wholesale, we were hoping that we'd be able to sell vegetables through, which we ended up being able to, but we were worried about not having sales to restaurants or our distributors being affected and not having as much sales through restaurants. The big thing for us is that we do a lot of our sales through farmers markets. And I recall seeing a lot of you at a conference earlier in the spring, just as COVID was hitting, and we were all trying to make sure that farmers markets were happening. And thank goodness we all came together and made that happen. And so a lot of producers were able to do that this year, but us in particular have a unique market at ANTHC, a partner of APU, the health campus in Anchorage. And one of our main markets is a farm stand that we have in the summer in the parking lot of a hospital. And it became clear pretty quickly that that wasn't going to happen this year. And so as a producer, all of a sudden we had to figure out where a lot of that food was going. And some of that could be taken care of with adjustment of production. But having a market like Tilth to sell food, fresh, healthy food, to be able to take this food and give it and distribute it to the people who needed it was really, really valuable for our farm. And I think, as Megan's going to talk about, to other farmers in the valley as well this summer. Next slide, Rachel. The other thing I want to talk about from the growing perspective, obviously Tilth provides market security, a place for this food to go alongside some of the other venues, but it also, a lot of farmers I know don't just farm because, they only love growing the vegetables. We do love growing the vegetables, but we also like knowing that the food goes to people in our local community, that we're contributing to our local community, that we're helping build, safe and healthy environments and people. And so knowing that we have the opportunity to grow food for an organization and a partnership that's distributing this food to people who are using it in the community and who want it and need it and can benefit from it has just been awesome, really rewarding. At the end of the day, that feels really good. And we've been involved in Tilth for a few years now, and we've always tried to donate, and we do donate still on top of kind of this Tilth grant program, but it's also, that added benefit of, helping support the farmers that participate in this program too. So that's a little bit of the grower perspective, and I think Megan will probably have more to introduce about some of the other farmers that participated.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan. I'm the 2020 Tilth coordinator for Alaska Tilth. I was actually brought on later on in the season because I didn't move up here to Alaska until about August. And I got started talking to Rachel because I'm a part of the MSOE program at APU, which is outdoor and environmental education. And I was telling Rachel how interested I was in food systems, and she was just like, I have this perfect opportunity. Are you interested? And after hearing everything that Tilth was about, I knew it was something that I had to get involved in. So basically a little bit about Tilth coordinator position is I'm kind of like a middle person between farmers and where the food is going. So I coordinate pickups with farmers, talk about, what kind of stuff they have, what time I need to pick things up. And then I take that food all the way over to Cooperative Extension, where then Adara takes over and gets it out to people who need it. So another part of Tilth coordinator is, farmer recruitment. A big part of having Tilth is having farmers who are going to be involved with it. And it's been a little more difficult this year. This is the first year I've done it, but it's been difficult trying to find people because, I'm not actually from Alaska, but one big thing I did find out was when I start talking to people, they don't really know about Tilth. And so when they find out that where the food is going, a lot of people are more enticed to join us because they know that the food is going somewhere amazing. I've got a few bios or testimonials from some farmers. Zoe Fuller, one of our farmers who was with Tilth, I think from the beginning of the season. She's a first-year farmer. Her farm, Singing Nettle, this is her first time. She's lived in Alaska her whole life and decided to start farming this year. And she was so grateful because it made a huge difference in her success as a first-year farmer, especially during the pandemic, which it was a crazy year to start first-year farming. Also, we had Michelle Church from Moonstone Farm actually get in touch with us because she was at the end of her harvest season and her market was closed, but she had so much stuff left and she wanted to be a part of Tilth. And like when I went over there to pick stuff up from her, I had probably, I think it was like 9 huge boxes of potatoes, 9 huge boxes of kale, carrots, cabbage. Like I had to make 2 trips just to get everything over to Cooperative Extension. And just from talking to Michelle then and now over the past couple of days, she was just so excited to sing Tilth's praises. So it's just pretty amazing having this position that I do, being able to talk to farmers, see how it's helping them, see that they're ecstatic about being a part of Tilth, and really hoping and encouraging them to be involved next year. And this is all the farmers that were involved with us this year: Sun Circle, Chugach Farms, Moonstone, Spring Creek, Singing Nettle, Brown Dog, Urban Bunny. And then we had a couple people. Keith Malone donated some stuff at the end of his season, and Ann Egerton had a huge, ginormous cabbage that she also donated to Tilth, which we are super happy about. So it's just really great having been able to been involved this year.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, I was
Sounds
having
good.
some internet trouble. So my name is Adair Harmon, and I'm the nutrition educator for the SNAP Ed program at the Cooperative Extension in the MATSU. And I also partner with the 4-H program for their Healthy Habits grant. So real quick, I want to know why the Cooperative Extension plays such an important role in the Tilth program. First and most obvious is space. The extension provides cold storage space where produce can be stored until the community partners can come pick it up. And also the produce from the university's variety trials at the Manuska Experiment Farm are also donated to the Tilth. So they donated over 1,000 pounds this year. And lastly, I think most importantly, is the connection to the community. The extension is the home of the SNAP Ed program and 4-H within the Mat-Su Valley. So I think they all have very different goals and jobs, and how they do each of those jobs. That's different for everybody, whether it be policy, system, environment, or through classes or resources. They're all part of the local food system, and they have the common goal of getting resources and educational material into the hands of those that need it. So as you can see from the slide, part of the extension's mission is to extend relevant and research-based knowledge that is understandable and usable. SNAP Ed's aim is to increase the use of fresh local produce and nutrition education to community partner programs that reach out to those in need. And 4-H Healthy Habits focus is on food security and overall health and wellness. So I think they are all kind of great partners with that same common goal. So now that I've covered that, I'll talk to you kind of about what happens when the vegetables arrive at the extension. Actually, if you want to go back, Rachel, one. So the picture in the middle is just kind of like a snapshot of what I would pretty much get in a week, just so people kind of have a visual. And then the pictures on the side, I always have my hands in the picture so people can see just how big and wonderful these vegetables are. But so what I do from here is I weigh them first of all for our records, and then I sort things based on what our different community partners' needs are. So I talk to them all ahead of time, prior to the Tilth beginning, to assess what their specific needs are. If you want to go to the next slide. So our largest partner this year was Kids Covered. I put a lot of focus on Kids Covered. Kids Covered is the largest standalone state-approved sponsor of outside of school hours child nutrition program in the state. This summer, they served meals at over 30 different sites across the Mat-Su Valley. And I knew from speaking with them that there was going to be a really big need this year because of COVID. So we decided to send a lot of stuff their way because there was such a great need. So what we decided to do for them was to have them pick up produce in bulk. So this allowed them flexibility to work with what they already had, the resources they already had available. And Kids Covered staff is amazing, by the way. They're very resourceful and creative. As you can see, they serve hot and cold meals, but they also include the kids in what they're cooking. So they like to show the kids the produce each week. They get to taste it, and then they challenge them to find recipes. And the winning recipe, that child gets to help prepare the meal. So for Kids Covered, I try to send a really wide variety of vegetables, so the kids are able to try as many different things as possible. And then along with that produce, you'll see in the middle just some examples of educational flyers that I created that I sent out each week with the meals. So those are passed out when the kids receive their meals. The flyers include a simple healthy recipe, along with nutrition information about the vegetable of the week and a new physical activity to try. So the idea behind this was because we couldn't do classes. It gave kids that were stuck at home something fun to do, something educational, hopefully got them in the kitchen and using some more of those vegetables. And this actually enabled us to reach out to a lot more people than we would have normally been able to reach, because Kids Covered reaches so far out into the community, into a lot of small communities. All right, you can go to the next slide. Our other partners this year included the Mat-Su Food Bank in Wasilla, the Palmer Food Bank, and the Wasilla WIC office. In years past, what we've done is not only donate to these partners, but we would also hold weekly cooking demonstrations. So then that just involved me showing people how to cook a simple, healthy meal using local produce, which I really enjoy. It was really neat to see people come in kind of like, well, I don't know how to do this, cooking is too hard, or I don't know how to use this vegetable. But then to walk away and hear people say, like, that was super easy, I know I can do that, and they really enjoyed the food too. So, but due to COVID, we were unable to do that this year. So what we decided to do was kind of like a take-home version of a demonstration. Once the vegetables were weighed, then I would look for recipes and resources based on what I had available that week. And then from this, I created what I'm calling a recipe in a bag. So I would package up the vegetables needed for a particular recipe, then attach the recipe to the bag along with nutrition information, tips for storage and preserving, and cooking tips and tricks. So for these partners, my goal was to provide simple recipes that required very few items in the kitchen, as well as making sure that any other ingredients that were needed were items that could be commonly found at a food bank, or were low cost or WIC eligible items. So you'll see in the picture on the left, I chose a few different recipes for this particular mix of vegetables. This way people can pick a recipe that works best for them based on what they already have at home or at the food pantry. So some bags would come pre-packed if it was something like spinach, for example. So I'd send out a really simple recipe for that, like a salad or a smoothie. And then once all the bags were packed, the partners would come to the extension where they would get picked up. And what I love about these bags is it not only gets the produce into the hands of people that need it, but it gives them very simple, practical ways to use them. Really simple information. The flyers we sent out, just very basic, easy tips and tricks to use. So I think it makes eating healthy really simple and hopefully a little less intimidating. And the last slide for me is the numbers. This is the exciting part. So I wanted to show kind of a comparison of last year's numbers with this year's numbers, just so people can see what a huge difference that grant made this year. As you can see, we jumped from just over 5,500 pounds of vegetables last year to over 10,000 pounds this year. And the same goes for the number of meals that the Tilth vegetables were used in at Kids Covered. This jumped from over 16,000 meals to over 70,000 meals just this summer. So we were also able to provide over 1,400 recipe bags to our local food banks and the local WIC office. So while COVID made us totally rethink and adjust this year, it really was a huge opportunity, and it did enable us to reach way more people than we could have normally reached, way farther out into our community. So hopefully open the door to future opportunities for nutrition education in the community. So that's it for me, and I'll pass it back to Rachel.
Thank you, Adair, Megan, and Ben. From all of you watching, you can see that this is not a small effort. This is supply chain, this is farmer relations, this is hunger advocacy, anti-hunger advocacy. And again, this is a year-to-year project. And so it was started from a very grassroots perspective several years ago. And this was our first year we were really able to break out and pilot it with some serious program funds. And obviously, as you saw in the numbers in the last slide, we were able to more than double the impact. What's insane to me about the magnitude of this project is how wonderful it is that we're able to serve. I mean, this year, over 70,000 meals just from Kids Covered alone. But the fact that that need is even there is crazy. And so that's the goal of Tilth, is to continue to reduce that need, but also providing market-based or market access for farmers. And if you think about this in the big scheme of things, think about, economic development. If farmers, especially new farmers like Zoe from Singing Nettle Farms, if they can have a bit of a guaranteed market where the produce goes to those in need and they have a guaranteed market in their first couple of years, it softens the landing. Farming is a very low margin, high risk game in the best of times. And so when you're dealing with uncertain weather patterns as well as a global pandemic, having some guaranteed market is a game changer, as we saw this year. So I am so grateful to our Tilth team, to our farming network, to the hunger organizations who are working every day to feed hungry bellies. And so where do we go from here? I've talked to a couple people at different hunger organizations. Everyone's excited about Tilth. Currently, we're just in a very small area of the Matanuska-Susitna Valley. We are pursuing funding for 2021. If you have ideas or partnerships, we would love to hear from you. We are always looking to expand our Tilth farmer network, both farmers that can donate as well as would like to receive payment for produce. We take all kinds of produce. We're looking for project partners to execute, scale, help grant write. And we also want to hear about the need. So if you are an organization that is in need of fresh produce, we would also like to hear that to better demonstrate the need in our community. And by community, I mean Alaska. Here's our contact information. We are ready to talk anytime. This is nobody's full-time job, but it is a full-time job collectively. This is a really impactful program. We all, as Ben said earlier, this is gratifying work. And clearly by the stats that we know that Adair shared earlier, is that this is a very needed program. So it is, 3:59. Nice job, team. We can take a couple questions before moving on to the next session. And if you would rather not, you're welcome to reach out to us anytime. So thank you for listening today. I'm gonna stop sharing. And I'm gonna check Huva to see managing two platforms. All right, hearing no questions, you know where to find us. Thanks for your attention today. Thanks to our Tilth team. You guys don't have to hang out if you don't want to. All right, moderator hat back on. Let's go to our next session with Sunny. Do we have Sunny here? I just saw your name. Yeah, there you are. Training the next generation of Alaska fishing leaders, the Alaska Young Fishermen's Summit. Sunny, you are welcome to share screen whenever you're ready.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the controls. Okay, let me see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see. I think I'm almost there. Now, can you see it?
There you are. Yes.
Okay, great.
Go ahead and go full screen whenever you're ready.
Yeah, how about that? Can you see the whole screen?
Yes, you might want to go into presentation mode.
Oh, I am. At least I think I am.
I'm just seeing your...
What do you see?
I see like as if you were working on your PowerPoint. I see all your slides on the left-hand side.
Okay.
If you go to the bottom right of your screen, you should see a full presentation mode icon.
I needed to, no? So how's that? Yep, is that it now? No?
I'm still seeing, nope.
Shoot. Well, from within PowerPoint, if I go to a full slideshow, it's filling up my whole screen, but not your guys's. Okay. Well, why don't we just work with it as it is? You'll get to see a little previews of my slides. Because you can see the slide that says Trading the Next Generation of Alaska Fishing Leaders, Oh, you can probably see my notes too, huh?
No, it looks like, well, we can see your notes. Yeah, it looks, are you working on 2 monitors?
Yes.
Okay, that sometimes is where the,
This WUVA thing is different than when I tested it out last week, so or earlier this week. So, but I think we'll just go ahead with it. Thank you very much, and thanks for all of the work that all of you are doing to bring us fresh vegetables. I feel very lucky. I'm here in Petersburg in Southeast Alaska, tiny little 3,000 people, and we have this beautiful farm called Farragut Farms that brings us fresh vegetables during the summer, and I could not be more grateful for them and for all of you that are working on that. So I'm coming a little bit from the sea side of this, and I was happy to have followed someone in Cooperative Extension because that reminded me that I work for a program called Alaska Sea Grant, which is in many ways the cooperative extension of the sea. And so we're also a partnership between the federal government through the university system to provide outreach and education, in our case, to people that use marine resources, and in my case, mostly commercial fishermen. So I'm going to tell you about the Alaska Young Fisherman Summit program that we've been doing since 2007. The idea of the Alaska Young Fisherman Summit was founded when I met up with another young fisherman. We realized that it was getting more complicated to get into, more challenging from business perspective to get into commercial fishing, and that young fishermen needed a voice in the regulatory process, and they maybe needed some assistance in understanding as their economics changed of fishing, how to make it happen. So our basic goal of the program is to create networks of well-connected, financially stable, informed, and involved Alaska fishermen. When we first started, we said, okay, we'll see if we can get 30 fishermen to come, and if we do, then we'll keep going. And we were pleasantly surprised to get about 50, 60 to our first one in 2007, and we've kept going since then, every other year. We really work to get participants from all over the state and from all the different gear groups to come to the summit. That's an important aspect of what we feel like we're doing. As mentioned with the Agriculture of the Middle program, these connections that can be made are a really important part about what we do. Early on, we sort of defined young as under 40 or in the business for less than 5 years. We didn't check anybody's ID at the door or anything like that, but we've really revised that a little bit to be people that are in the business for less than 5 years, but that are committed to the business. So people who have purchased, in the fishing world, you purchase a fishing permit, people who've actually purchased a fishing permit to try to get them right at the beginning of their career, but that they're actually committed to fishing. Over the since 2007, we've had 500 fishermen, and we've had them from 60 different fishing communities. So I'm proud of the stretches that we've had to get people from all over the state. And we've been able to have a little bit of travel scholarships most times we do it to help make sure that we get people from a wide variety of places so that they can really interact with each other. This is a 2-day, I should mention, it's a 3-day event, happens every other year in a single location. Our speakers are almost exclusively people that are members of the industry. Most of them are fishermen, but many of them may be accountants that are used to working with fishermen, or bankers that work, that lend to fishermen. CFAB, who I believe also works in the agriculture world, is a great supporter and helper. And so we, as the extension folks, try not to do the teaching. We try to let people who've actually been there and done it. I'm not a fisherman myself, although many of my partners on the project are, but we try to let those other folks do the talking. We have had, over the years, 133 different volunteers. So these are people that have busy other lives. It's really gratifying to see that they volunteer their time away from their fishing business or their banking business or their accounting business and come because they're motivated to see the next generation of fishermen succeed. We say that what we're covering is the land-based aspects of running a commercial fishing operation. So we're not teaching people how to fish and where to fish or what kind of fish to catch, I guess, but more the things like what are the global markets for fish, and why is the price that you see in the grocery store or at Pike Place Market very different from the price that you get at the dock. We do quite a bit on business and financial management. We teach some about the science of fisheries management so that folks understand why these decisions are being made. This is different than in the farm world, I'd say, and also the regulatory process, which is complex. I think it's probably complex in the farming world. I think it's probably more complex in the fishing world. So people who want to have a future in fishing need to get involved in that regulatory process. And learn how to do that. That in our case, it's the Alaska Board of Fisheries or the North Pacific Fishery Management Council. I put a star on my business though, because as the years have gone by, that has been the thing that attracts the most people. And I think most people in their evaluations afterwards tell us is what they really appreciate, helping them just get an understanding of how to manage a fishing business. There's a lot going on, just like in a farm. A fifth and sort of equally important topic to those other four is networking. We connect the fishermen with each other, but we really also try to connect them with leaders in their industry and people from established fishermen from all over the state. And we make this a formal part of the process by having, this is only a 3-day event, so we find money for 2 different receptions. One after the first night that brings just the speakers together with the young fishermen to give them a chance to meet each other. And then the next night we host a broad industry-wide reception with formal invitations sent out to industry leaders, whether we're in Juneau or Anchorage, and invite them to come. So that the young folks can meet them. And that's been another thing that we hear in our evaluations is what people really think is important. I wanted to add a note that invariably we're asked to provide more Alaska seafood at our receptions and in our hotels. And it's very hard to come by and very expensive. So this is something for this group to think about, I think, is how to get that, how to get our Alaskan foods to people that are on our cruise ships or going to our conferences in our state and that kind of stuff. But it's just a little bit of an aside. So our teaching methods have really evolved based on the evaluations that we've had come in. We always get comments about too much sitting. I just can't sit for that long. I'm not that kind of a person, or just get us up out of our seats every once in a while. So we try to stay away from sitting and getting lectured at, although we definitely have that. But we try to focus on as much hands-on stuff as we can, small group work, and also sort of role playing. So for example, the Board of Fisheries process, as I mentioned, is very important if you're a fisherman to understand the regulatory process. And we started out, for example, with regulators coming and talking about the Board of Fish process. And that gets dry, and it's hard for people that are that involved in it to step back sort of objectively and really teach it. And so we decided to make a whole mock board of fish. It's maybe some people have done a mock Senate. We do a mock board of fisheries to get them the experience of what it would be like if they were actually at a meeting and had to testify. After a couple of years, we have a lot of people constantly asking us to address a different topic, a new topic, their issue of the day. And so we have added we ended up adding a third day. It started out as 2 days, and those tend to be more breakout sessions. So it's just something, this conference has already obviously done that as well, but we ended up having to do that, although we like keeping folks together as much as we can. And then after a few years, we also added field trips just for there to be less setting. And this is often a way, here we are in Juneau at the NOAA lab. When we're up in Anchorage, we've gone to the Fish and Game offices to get people really connecting with the managers that are managing their fisheries on a personal level. And that's one of our goals actually, is to try to foster positive relationships between fishermen and the fisheries managers, which we have compared to other parts of the state, of the country, I think Alaska does a pretty good job there. After 8 years, well, it's been more than that by now, we've been able to bring back alumni. So folks that went to our first couple, we now have them come back every year and talk about how they've applied what they learned at the summit. What are they doing now? What tips do they have? They're sort of that egg of the middle age, I guess. They're not the beginning people, and they're not our sort of old salts that we have doing the teaching, but they a lot of times are better able to relate, or able to relate in a really nice way to the struggles that our brand new fishermen are dealing with, because they've been in it a little while, but they're still having those challenges than these folks that have been at it for a long time, are well established, have it figured out how they're going to make ends meet and the like. So just, if folks are thinking about doing something like this, our budget, it's not inexpensive as with everything. We try to offer these travel scholarships. You have to pay for hotel space and food, although, in the virtual world, I don't know if that will change or not, but by bringing people together all in one place is really important to us, but that adds to your cost. So travel and lodging for speakers and the like. And it ends up costing us about $60,000 to $75,000 per summit. That's including the time that we as Alaska Sea Grant staff put in to make it happen. Part of the way that we do that is through sponsorship. So we are incredibly grateful to have industry sponsors who give us general donations to help us put the festival on. And then we also have fishing organizations will sponsor young fishermen to attend, which I think is a really cool, it helps the brand new fisherman who doesn't have a lot of money, who needs to fly to Juneau or Anchorage for this thing. They'll help them out. But it's also a way for those organizations, and I realize that the Farm World organization is much smaller than the fishing world, but it gives those organizations an opportunity to tap on the shoulder of a young fisherman and say, we think you are showing promise, we think you're an upcoming leader, we'd like to help send you to this summit and go learn some things and bring it back to us. So that's been a great way to help make this expensive event happen, is through that sponsorship. We have been proud to see that people have asked us to come from other places and have spread this idea to other parts of the country. So we've got some blue stars there in British Columbia, Nova Scotia, and Louisiana, where we've had folks come to our summit and then go put something on similar in their neck of the woods. Folks in Oregon and Mississippi, there's an organization called Mississippi Alabama Sea Grant. They put them together. Been working with us to think about how they might do something similar in their neck of the woods. And then since we started the Young Fisherman Summit, we've actually learned that I've learned about something called the Maine Fishermen's Forum, which actually predated what we were doing by many, many years. It's been going on every year. They bring fishermen from all over the state, and not necessarily geared as exclusively to young fishermen, but still looks like a pretty cool event. And I was hoping to get there this year. We'll see what happens. We started, our first Young Fisherman Summit was in December in Anchorage. And like I said, we were pleasantly surprised with the turnout, but we heard immediately afterwards that for the Kodiak fishermen, January was a much better time. And so that year we actually did it again that very next January in Anchorage. And then after a couple of years of doing that every other year, we decided that it might be good to go to Juneau and get the Southeast fishermen and intersect with the legislature a little bit. So we've come into it as a pattern where we just put it on every other year and we switch between Juneau and Anchorage. And when we do it in Anchorage, we do it in December. There's a North Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting every December, and we time it to coincide with that so that they can interact with those North Pacific Fishery Management Council people. And then we do it at the beginning of the legislative session in either late January or early February. So our next one will be in December 2021 in Anchorage. And then I just thought if there are folks here that are thinking about doing something similar, sort of some of the lessons that I've learned in doing this for 13 years now, and some of them are surprising, some of them are maybe not surprising. In addition to the don't just ask young, active, outdoor-like people to sit in their chairs all day for 3 days in a row, that was been a big one. But in our case, these folks, these young fishermen are sort of a hot commodity for organizations and advertisers. And that's been sort of surprising and one of the most challenging parts. So we are being asked all the time to address somebody's issue at the Young Fisherman Summit, or to provide somebody's calendars for free at the Young Fisherman Summit. And so it's just something to think about, I guess, if because it's a challenge. We really want to maintain that this is it doesn't have a specific political agenda. I mean, we want young fishermen to succeed. And I guess we have some goals. You know, we want them to have good relationships with the fisheries managers. We want them to, you know, not have to foreclose on their permit. But we don't want to be doing specific political issues. And so that one's been a challenge, but a really important goal, I think, in the success, which allows us to have support from all over the industry, particularly in an industry like fishing, where different gear groups don't necessarily agree with each other. I would say if you were thinking about doing this, in addition to asking the new fishermen or new farmers or new entrants, what is it that you want to know? I think it was really helpful for us to ask older fishermen, established, successful fishermen, what do you wish you had known? Or what did somebody tell you that was incredibly helpful? And in fact, that's what we ask our speakers to do when they speak in front of our group is, what do you wish you had known when you were a kid? This is your chance. This is your soapbox, you know, help the kids not make the mistakes that you did. Again, I'd say for somebody that's thinking about doing something like this, unless you are a farmer or a fisherman or a retailer, then your job is not to teach and speak, I think, but to empower others to do that. So find the fishermen, find those farmers, and they are gems when you find them, those people that their heart is just, they're so excited about their industry and that it keeps going. And it's so great to give them an opportunity to teach. You know, most of the time they've never been asked to do something like that. They're just doing their business. And so when you find the good folks, they are amazing people. And just the last lesson, I guess I would say, is that it's really a lot of fun. I would encourage somebody to try it because the energy that you get from new people that are excited about starting something new it can't really be matched. So I tried to go a little bit quickly because I'm hoping that we could have a little bit of time for questions. I'm happy to answer anything. I don't think I can see the chat. So maybe if one of the moderators can help me, let me know if there are any questions. Happy to answer them. Apologies for the...
Thanks, Sunny. I do not see any questions yet. I'm monitoring Zoom and Whova, but now's the time.
Trying to figure out how to stop share here.
I can do that for you if it's easier.
Oh, there it is. Sure, yeah, go ahead. That'd be great. Okay, great.
There you go.
Thanks. Folks can have a little break.
Okay, thanks, Sunny. So the next part of the session is 4 o'clock, or I'm sorry, it's almost 4:30. And so from 4:30 to 5, we're doing a break. Here is, I'm chatting everyone the link to our AFPC auction. There's some really amazing goods that have been donated to the auction, and we're almost halfway to our goal. So people are bidding, which is amazing. I just chatted you the link. Check it out. We have a half-hour break until our final keynote of the day, which is Valerie Seacrest from the Native American Agricultural Fund, or NAF. And the keynote is called Gathering Collective Strength Through Food Sovereignty. So we should end on a really powerful note today. As Sunny just said, sitting for a long time is taxing on people. So I encourage you to get up, walk around, process what you just heard all day, and check out the auction, and we'll see you at the keynote at 5 o'clock. Thanks for being here, everyone.